everyone to this amazing Diamond Night call with our crown diamond and very well-known person. And it's an honor having him tonight with us. Dr. Ollie, thank you so much, Doc, that you take time. Welcome. Good evening to you as well. I think you have another time zone now. And before you start, Doc, I like to say some words about you. Um, Guys, when I met Dr. Ollie 2 years ago, I was very impressed because he is, it's not easy to describe him with one word. He is so much. He is, of course, from his background, a doctor, he is a scientist, he is a networker, he is a leader, he is a father, now grandfather, and he is so much. He helps dogs to survive, so he cares on animals, on nature, everything. And when you spend time with Dr. Ollie, you experience a journey. He takes you through his journeys, and this man made so many very interesting journeys in his life, and I learned so much from him. And it's always a joy to listen to him and his life stories and life lessons. And I remember one of his amazing speech 2 years ago. He was talking about the three brains, the brain, the
Перевода
heart,
на русский
and the
звук, на
stomach.
русский язык нету.
And I
Ali,
was
Ali,
so
sorry,
impressed.
I must interrupt you. Sorry for that. Let's try to assign Anastasia again because we don't hear Russian translation. We have an option, but we
Okay.
can't hear Anastasia.
Let's do it.
Again.
Let's do it again. It should work now. Let's try again. Now it's working. Okay, great. Thank you. So, and when you meet Dr. Ollie, he's telling you stories about Gary, stories about his life, and just by listening to him, you can learn so much. And again, I had him at one event in Germany, listening to his free brain speech. He was talking about and it was so impressive. So now let's welcome together Dr. Ollie. Hi. You are mute.
Okay.
Yeah, yes.
You had to give me permission. So,
yes.
Well, hello, everybody. It is an outstanding pleasure being with you. And I see at least a third of the people are from Russia, and I see some names from my teams in Russia. So hello, Moscow at the same time. And thank you so much, Ali, for the very, very friendly and nice and flattering introduction. And so, yeah, my life story is different than others. And that's something that Gary and I discussed many times because we had, at the end, we figured out that we are like brothers from other mothers, meaning that we had very, very similar upcomings and experiences throughout our life. And that got us really, really close. And maybe one correction, you wrote in the introduction that I was Gary's physician. I always like to paraphrase that, say that a little differently, because Gary was his own person, very well, with good knowledge in natural health and naturopathy. And so I always say I was his medical advisors, helping him to find the way through the modern hallways of modern medicine, because he came from the world of alternative medicine. I came from the world of very high-tech, modern, genetic, genomic diagnostics medicine, and we found ourselves in the middle. And in fact, on one convention, we wanted to do a presentation together where he started on one end of the stage and I would start on the other end of the stage. And we would first be almost angry at each other because the other one would use a different type of medicine. And then we would, at the end, meet in the middle and hug each other, because that's where the power of medicine is. It's when you bring together the old and the new, the natural and some of the good stuff we have in modern medicine. And so it's all about wellness, fitness, and beauty at Young Living. And today we're going to talk a lot about these things. So thank you so much. For me, this experience of having Gary as my best friend and living with him for almost 3 years together, and when he passed on his knowledge to me about oils and other things, it was a very important time and still is in my life. And so when I'm with Young Living and I build as a builder, as a Crown Diamond currently, but not that far away from the Royal Crown, it has a different meaning for me. The building is not that much for the network marketing. The building for me becomes, I promised Gary, that was one of my biggest promises I had to make, to become Royal Crown Diamond, not because of the money that I will get and I can do good things, but because his mission. We need to carry on his torch, his mission. And I can do that best when I can reach many people. And, as a Royal Crown Diamond, you reach more people than as a diamond or as a gold. And so that's the really simple reason why I really want to get there.
Awesome. And I can't, I mean, you told us so many stories which you experienced with Gary. And I love one especially story. I think you know which one, where the one where he took you to the farm and let you to try the ground of the farm, right?
Yeah, in fact, that started, he did that with several people, but with me, he did that in Mexico. This is something you don't know. I mean, he wanted to have his own farm in Mexico, and not just a partner farm, but a Young Living farm. And so we spent about 2.5 weeks traveling through Mexico, looking for the right farm. And we found the whole valley. And when you're Gary, you just don't buy a farm by just looking at it. He was walking every single meter of that farm. I mean, he was walking it. And while I was walking with him, he was telling me, Ollie, this is what we look for. And then he said, look, my boots, look how they go into the ground, and look how the ground is going down the hill. This is perfect for valerian because it has moisture, but the water is coming off, and it's steep and it has good sunshine. Then he looked at the hill and said, this is for wolfberry. And for the Ninja Red, and then this is for goldenrod and lavender. I mean, on and on and on. And then suddenly he turned around and said, all right, let's start eating the dirt. And I looked at him and said, whoa, what's going on here? He said, no, eat the dirt. So I'm starting taking dirt. I mean, when Gary tells you, you do it, right? So I did it, and, it was okay, And then we walk a little further, and he said, now taste again. And we did that about 7 times. And after 5-6 times, he said, now start describing to me, like with a good wine, what do you taste? And there was amazing, the differences in the taste in the soil. And he started explaining to me and said, well, you taste a little bit more nitrogen here. Here you taste a deficiency of minerals. And so this is how he judged the soil. And after about 7 times, I said, Gary, look, I'm almost nauseated. I mean, I'm getting full with that soil. That's a lot of soil I swallowed. And he looked at me and laughed and said, I never told you to swallow, right? So normally I spit it back out, right? So anyway, so I have half of Mexico in me. So sorry, Mexico.
I love this story. I love it. It tells so much about Gary, but also about you both relationship, what you had. So, I mean, we are so curious and excited today to hear from you, of course, about CBD. I know from a lot of people they can't wait to hear about it, but I would like to spend a quick minute maybe also to hear from you. You came with this background as a scientist and doctor. Why network marketing now? Why you are so excited about Young Living and network marketing?
Well, you have to understand how I came to Young Living. The former chief of research and development at Young Living came to a physician conference where I was talking about lifestyle, because at that time I had lost about 50 kilos. And my life had changed completely at that point. And I was trying to teach other physicians to live a healthier life. And so the guy came up, he was obese, and he said, I need to lose weight. I looked at him and said, yeah, you need to do what I was just teaching you for 3 days. And about 6 months later, he called me back. He had lost about 30 or 40 kilos. And he said, I feel great. Do you want to come and speak for Young Living? And I didn't know what Young Living was. My wife was already giving me these oils. And I always said, no, stay away with that voodoo. How can an oil work on the body? I mean, as a modern physician, I just didn't have the understanding. And in fact, it took me quite a while, even after I was really good friend with Gary and then we became best friends, to understand. And I will tell you in my little lecture I'm going to give you, I will tell you with what I was struggling with, what he was telling me. But over time, I was really spending a lot of time reading the research. And one day, as Gary predicted, the bulb went on, the light bulb. It was like a whole Christmas chain of lights went on in my head. And I said, oh my God, how could I not see this? And that changed me radically also on how I look at medicine in general and at patients. We need to get patients more healthy with lifestyle and not wait until they're sick and then make 10 different prescriptions in with medicine. It's just the wrong way. And so 6 years ago, I decided to retire. I was a very senior person in a hospital, quite famous in the United States for different reasons in medicine. And I just decided to leave. And I didn't think that much about the money. Of course, if you leave a job where you have a high salary, of course you think about the money. But for me, it was more like, I need to change something in my life. Something is not right. And so the money comes when you do the change and you live it every single day. So the network marketing part became very important after 1 or 2 years. But in the beginning, it wasn't the reason why I went and started Young Living. The products and Gary was the reason, but not the money. The money comes when the passion is here, when your lifestyle and your everyday action is here. And every day for me means healthy living, healthy house, healthy family, healthy animals, healthy planet Earth. And when that is your guideline, then Young Living is your company, and then the money will come automatically.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for remind us and share your passion with us. I really appreciate this. So one of your talents, which I forgot to mention earlier, is that you are also a book writer. So you're author. So, and maybe this is a nice bridge now to our topic. So you wrote several books, and tonight we like also to talk about one of these books and the topic as well, CBD. So Doc, tell us, how came it that you get so passionate about CBD, wrote your book, and share your knowledge about CBD with us. Help us to understand why CBD is so interesting, what can it means for our lives, for other people's lives, and why Young Living CBD.
So I have to go back a little bit in history, and I have to always do this somewhat carefully because the legal situation has changed radically over the last 3 or 4 years. But you have to understand that in medicine, CBD has been around since about 2003, 2004. In fact, in 2003, the company that produces purified CBD for certain forms of epilepsy that is now granted a drug status. So we in the medical world, we knew about CBD when you never heard about it. And I jumped on that CBD bandwagon very, very early on. The problem was, how do you get your CBD? Because farmers were not growing it yet. And if they were, it was just a byproduct of marijuana kind of thing. And so at that time, there were some legal channels on importing it into the United States from the Netherlands. It had to be reformulated and repackaged to be able to send it. And it had all to do with anti-aging medicine at the time as a cosmetic for the skin. And so I started working with CBD over a decade ago, very intensely. And I immediately recognized the special thing about CBD. And I started immediately to start mixing it with essential oils. And in fact, when Gary was here for a couple of months at my house, I gave him the first CBD about 7 years ago. And it was so bad tasting at the time because it was full of chlorophyll and really bad tasting terpenes that he immediately spit it out. And so we have a joke because I told him, you just spit out 40 euros worth of CBD. And then he said, oh, let me get it back. And he went to the sink and tried to, with the finger, to get it back out. And so I said, no, it's fine. I'll give you another dose. But immediately we started mixing together. And he said, oh, that would be great with this oil. And I said, what about this oil? I said, oh, yeah, let's mix it. So about 7 or 5 years before Young Living could start selling CBD, Gary was already mixing CBD with essential oils. And so it's a long, long history. And in my practice at the time that I had when I left the hospital, I also used CBD to help my patients. And so I always laugh when I listen today to many physicians that talk about CBD. Maybe a year ago, I was laughing because I knew 90% of these physicians never had used CBD on themselves or on their patients, but they talk everything about it. It's like today with COVID. Those that are the loudest talking about COVID are those that never treated a COVID patient, right? Because those who are treating COVID patients, they're busy. They don't have time to do too many Zooms or Facebook Lives. But anyway, so it's like the same thing with CBD. And so I will tell you a little bit when I show you the presentation, but CBD, I'm probably one of the most experienced CBD doctors around the world. I'm certainly have right now the most comprehensive book about CBD because I check all the books and they all have CBD on the title because CBD is a big word. But when you read the book, it's all about marijuana. Complete confusion because there's so much research about marijuana and there's so little research compared about CBD. So I really took a full year of really researching the science about CBD. And that combined with my experience that I had led to this book.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And I'm sure I know that from some of the English-speaking regions that people already ordered your book and you translate it now into German, right?
That is correct. So the book is now available in German, as my other book too. These are 2 bestsellers. The CBD book sold over 40,000 in just short time, and the other one sold over 400,000 already. So we're getting close to 500,000. And now I have both in German, and I'm printing in Germany, and I'm shipping out of Germany because previously you had to order everything from the US. And in fact, that online bookstore has also ordered a few English versions, and they're on the way. So we should be able also soon to ship out of Germany and save a lot of custom fees and shipping fees and shipping time from shipping from the US. But right now, most my English-speaking books, you have to go to drolly.com. I'll show you that later. And then in a few weeks, probably you can order them out of Germany to save a little money and time.
And are you planning to do the book in other languages as well?
You have to understand, my primary language is German. So translating in German should not be a big deal. It took me 6 months. Wow. So for me to translate in a language that I don't understand, I don't know if the meaning of the book is correct. And so that will take me about a year. And my primary mission is to get to Royal Crown Diamond, not to write books. So first Royal Crown Diamond. And once I Royal Crown Diamond, because it's a complete distraction, I call it the diamond disease. The moment we become diamond, we start writing books for others. And when we do so, we lose our diamond status because we have no time to take care of the people. That's a really good lesson for everybody. Just be really stable first if you build the network before you start creating tools. And, you make more money being a Royal Crown Diamond than selling books. I'm just telling you.
Of course. So good to know. So I think the English version, it's interesting for a lot of people here. And if you don't mind, it would be great if you share the link later on in the chat. And I will share it as well, guys, when I do sharing the recording of this call. So Doc, let's talk about CBD. So why CBD and why CBD from Young Living? And what is the special about CBD?
So I will show you some slides and I will go into that. But in general, you have to understand that for centuries, we have made a mistake. We have confused the word cannabis with marijuana. Cannabis is the name of the botanical name of the plant. The plant is called cannabis, and then it has different subfamily names. Whereas marijuana is one of the ways you can grow cannabis, but hemp is the other way you can grow cannabis. And I will explain to you with some slides, so you have some visuals, what's the difference between the two, how you grow the two. In fact, today I'm going to do something special for the first time in English. I did it yesterday for the first time in German with about 400 people on a Zoom. I'm going to tell you a little bit, some details about the harvesting of hemp. And so just to give you some tricks. So I think maybe before we just finish that discussion, maybe I'll go over and give the lecture with the slides, with the visuals. And then when we're done, you ask the question where you still see some unclarities or where you want some additional information.
Great. We feel blessed that you do this with us. Thank you.
Okay, so if you allow me, I will share my slides. Let's see.
Yeah, should work.
Okay, and so I'm going to ask you, Ali, you see the slides?
Yes, we see them.
Perfect. So, all right. So today we're going to talk about the power of CBD and essential oils. And I'm going to start right away with this gentleman. Those who don't know him, this is Gary Young. And in fact, this picture is on that field. And you see he's smelling a plant because he didn't know what that was. But this is the field where he made me 7 times the soil. This is in Mexico. But for quite a while, Gary was saying on stage, and to me all the time, you don't have to exactly understand an essential oil. Once you use it, your body will know what to do with it. And for me, as a scientist, as a physician, this was driving me crazy. And I always said, Gary, stop. You cannot say that. And he said, why not? And I said, well, what's the proof? Why do you say this? We need to know how it works. And he said, no, you don't. And then he laughed and he looked at me and said, I know you're almost there. You will get there. We will get together there, but you will understand very soon. And it took me about 6 months after that, and suddenly I understood. But for that time, this is what happened to me. It was terrible for me. I was ripping out my hair. I said, Gary, help, you cannot say this. So please keep this in mind. I want to come back to this all the way at the end of this lecture. So what are my qualifications? We already talked about those. I started very early on using CBD, essential oils, some mixes. You see my laboratory, which is the kitchen. Thank you, my wife, Ellen, for letting me use and abuse the kitchen. And here you see some not so good experiments where you see, like this is, I think, olive oil. You see the CBD portion and you see some curcumin here. That didn't mix so well. But today I have a really good mixture. And of course, with Nature's Ultra, Young Living CBD, you have a mixture that is absolutely, the CBD is perfect. But this is, I have a kilo CBD in my fridge, basically at all times to do my mixtures. And in fact, I also use CBD in kombucha. I make my own kombucha, probiotic drinks. I add CBD to salad dressings, to marinades for meat. I mean, I do all kinds of stuff, and I try everything myself. So I think I have pretty good qualifications to talk about that and experience. But what is CBD? CBD stands for cannabidiol. And this is basically the description, the name for the formula of CBD. It's a natural substance from hemp. And it is not to be confused with marijuana. It is different. It has a different chemical formula. Marijuana goes to the brain and makes you psychoactive effects, like you get crazy, you get paranoia, you get nightmares. But CBD doesn't do that. And I will explain a little later why not. And so for us, it has many, many uses in humans and animals. It's a true treasure from God and nature. So if you never have seen a hemp field, I'm not talking about marijuana field, I'm talking about hemp field. This is cannabis plant. And you see the farmer is about a third of the size of the hemp. So if you have ever seen a hemp field, this is how it looks like. If you have never seen it, it's impressive. I mean, you will know when you drive by a hemp field that is grown in this fashion. Today, for certain reasons, the hemp is not that high anymore. Today, this plant is grown to about the size of a human and not that high, unless you want to grow the hemp for the fibers, which you're going to find in the stem of the hemp. Normally, the CBD we will find up in the flowers, and when you let the hemp grow so tall, the flowers are not that great. Okay, so I will show you that in the next few slides. And this is what you have never heard before, if you have heard some of my lectures. I'm going to talk a little bit about the harvest. So what is so special, and when do you harvest hemp or marijuana for that purpose? So we need to understand that the hemp plant, cannabis plant, hemp plant, or even cannabis plant, marijuana plant, they have different parts. And when we talk about hemp, we have three parts. We can get CBD out of the hemp plant. We can get the hemp seeds, which we can eat out of the hemp plants, and we can get fibers that we get from the stem. Why would we want fibers? Because we can make textiles like t-shirts, clothing, shoes, sails, ropes, a canvas to paint on, paper, building materials. All of that can be made with this fiber material. So generally speaking, hemp will be ready to be harvested about 3 to 4 months, 90 to 120 days after the planting. But the problem is that fiber, seed, and CBD are typically all harvested at different times. And so this is why it's so difficult to harvest all three components of the plant at the same time. But you have to cut the plant to harvest. So you have to decide as a farmer, what do you want to harvest before you decide when you're going to harvest the plant? The other problem we have, the outdoor harvest season in most parts of the world coincides with bad weather season of the fall. Here in the United States with the hurricane season. And the hurricanes bring a lot of bad weather, even inland, even if you're not living at the coast. And in fact, right now, we have another hurricane coming towards Texas, Hurricane Delta, and we expect landfall probably within the next 5 days or so. But we need to harvest basically hemp before a big storm comes in, because when it gets wet by a big rain, by thunderstorm, by a hurricane, your crop, your harvest, your leaves that you want to use for the CBD, they can get a disease called mold, or mildew. So it's very important that you harvest before the moisture comes in. And of course, if you grow hemp in the mountains like Colorado, like Young Living does, or in Utah, then you need to harvest before the first frost, the snow. And here's a picture. I'm going to show you a few more later. This is a field in Colorado that got unexpected, some snow and ice overnight, and the whole field was destroyed. Now, another problem you have as a farmer, that you have to check out your field to make sure you have not a hot field. What does it mean to have a hot field? Because hemp is from the cannabis plant, and because marijuana is from the cannabis plant, hemp can also produce marijuana. By law, it has to be less than 0.3%. The abbreviation for marijuana is THC, tetrahydrocannabinol. This is the chemical abbreviation for marijuana, as CBD is the abbreviation for cannabidiol. So when your field has more than 0.3% marijuana, it becomes illegal, even if it's a hemp field. Now, what is the danger for the plant to get too much marijuana? When the plant is stressed, so much as not enough water, too much nutrients, not enough nutrients, heat, cold, can all result in a stress of the plant, which then produces more aggressive resin, which is marijuana. And if you grow hemp, it is very important that you test your field every few days, at least once a week in the harvesting season, to make sure that you don't go over 0.3%. Because if you do, your field is too hot and you need to destroy your field. Typically, they're going to burn the field, or you need to cut the field and then burn it later on. So it is very important that the farmer is in control of what is happening on the field. Most farmers will plant hemp or cannabis hemp in May or June, and then typically harvest around September and October. Now, if hemp is grown for CBD and flowers, you need to watch the plant to know exactly when to harvest. So when the flower, the buds of the flower are still green, but some of the leaves begin to turn a little bit brown or a little lila in the purple in the color, when the little feathers I'm going to show you will turn from white to orange, and when the little places where the plant produces CBD or marijuana turn from clear to milky white in color, then we know the hemp is ready to be harvested. And this is how it looks like. So what are trichomes? Trichomes are like little mushrooms. You see here all these little mushrooms on the leaves. Every plant, almost every plant that produces essential oils, aromatic plants, have these little trichomes. They're like lavender, peppermint. They have all these. They're on the leaves. And that's why they produce the essential oils. And so when we distill the plant, this is what we break open with the distillation, and this is where we pull out the essential oil. We're going to extract the CBD from the hemp plant a little differently than we do this with regular essential oil, but distillation is one piece of 10 different steps we can do with hemp to get CBD. Now you see on the left side, they're all very clear up here, the mushrooms. So that means the plant is not ready to be harvested. But here it becomes very milky and cloudy. So this is the sign that the plant is ready to be harvested. Now, if you are a marijuana producer, you want to see the amber color, because that means there's a lot of marijuana in the trichomes. And so most marijuana growers are waiting longer to see this before they harvest. But for hemp, this is for CBD, this is what you're looking for here. And this I told you I'm going to show you a picture. This is a field in Colorado. We were sending a team up there, or I was sending a team up there to film the harvest. And I hired the team a week before, and we had a drone flying and everything. And the night before the film team arrived on the field, they had snow and ice, unexpected. And this is the next day. The whole field was frozen and destroyed. So this is, of course, a complete disaster because the whole field is lost to the farmer. Now, how do you harvest? So this is from a movie from 1942. And you see they were inventing all kind of different hemp cutters. And you see the hemp was pretty tall. Now here you see a modern hemp cutter, and you already see that this hemp cutter is already dividing and cutting the flowers off, and they go up here into this container. And then here's another knife down here, and that will cut off all the stems, and we'll put it on the side and where they can be collected, or sometimes they have another collection thing. So the modern equipment can already separate some of the components and already process some of the components of the hemp. Now, you can also cut by hand. Why would you cut by hand? It is so difficult. I mean, this person here will have some backache in the evening after cutting the hemp with a knife or a machete or any of these things. Well, because when you cut by hand, you don't shake the plant that much, and so you have more intact trichomes with the CBD. So the yield goes up. So it's like a very, very high quality way of harvesting, but much, much more expensive. And in fact, this is how currently Young Living does it. Young Living in Colorado, they cutting by hand. So I gave you some secrets about harvesting. Nobody else has heard that before. And just to let you know, if you want to learn more about harvesting and processing and all that, I'm just finishing up an online training program I'm going to show you at the end, where I have 12 documentaries ready, each about 35 minutes about different topics on CBD. But when we go back to the plants, we see hemp plant and marijuana plant, both cannabis plant, look completely different. You see hemp is tall, has relatively few leaves, and marijuana is not as tall, is smaller, and has many, many leaves and flowers. So what is the difference? So let's go a little bit into detail to show you If you want to grow marijuana in your kitchen, I'm going to teach you now how to do that. If you want to grow hemp outside, I'm going to teach you how to do that. For both, you would need government permission. And in some countries, you're allowed to do it. In some countries, you're not allowed to do that. So I have in my book some little cartoons that I made in order to explain to you a little bit better the science. So here you see Dr. Ollie here as a man, and then my wife, Ellen. The male plant of the hemp has little testicles. We call them pollen sacs. And the woman of the hemp plant has little uterus. Basically, we call them pistils with a little feather. Now, why the feather? Because the feather has some glue on it. So when the male plant matures and is ready, these pollen sacs will open up. The pollen will come out and fly with the wind and will get stuck on the glue of this little pistil, and therefore it will impregnate the woman. So the woman will be sexually very satisfied. And please don't make any designs, so I'll do that. Good. And the plant will be very satisfied, and in that case will produce all the energy that the plant can produce will go into the pregnancy and into growing the baby. So this is how you create a CBD. When the plant is sexually satisfied and creates a baby, and the baby we call a hemp seed. Now, let's look at the hemp field. Here you see a female hemp plant with a lot of leaves and flowers. And here you see a male hemp plant. And what is the difference? The male is taller, has not as many leaves, but has all these pollen sacs. So before the pollen flies, let's imagine we now go into the field and we remove all the males. Because when you have female and male, when it gets dark in the night and we don't watch what they do, they have a lot of fun in the field. And then the next day, the woman is pregnant and sexually satisfied and gets a baby. Now, when you remove the male, there is no pollen. So the female really gets sexually frustrated. And she said, I want to get pregnant. How can I get pregnant? There's very few pollen flying around from the neighboring field. So she's very smart. The females are already very smart. And the female plant says, okay, I'm going to create more glue on my little feathers that the few pollen gets stick right away. It's going to be very sticky. And the glue on the plant is resin. So when you walk through the forest and you touch a tree, the resin of a tree, it's very difficult to wash off. It's very sticky. And so the same thing with the plant. If the plant creates more super glue, very sticky resin, that resin is very aggressive. It's much more aggressive than when the plant is satisfied. So when the plant is satisfied, the resin is CBD. When the plant is sexually frustrated and not satisfied, the resin becomes aggressive, and that resin is marijuana. And this is how you grow marijuana. You rip out all the males and you only have female. And then the female is sexually frustrated. So everybody that smokes marijuana smokes an unhappy, sexually frustrated plant. Everybody that takes CBD takes it from a very happy, satisfied plant. Now let's look one more time at these trichomes, right? These little producers of the resin. And you see they're quite white, so the plant is ready. And here you see these pistils with the glue. They're usually white, but now they turned orange. That's another sign that the plant is ready to be harvested. Now, to summarize what I just told you, so here you see all these trichomes. They're pretty clear here. But when you put man and female together, it gets dark on the field. They have a lot of fun together. We don't know what they do. They're very sexually satisfied. The women are all pregnant. They create a lot of babies, as you see here. And the babies are hemp seeds. And so the plant is rich in CBD. That means about 2 to 3%. Today, with the changes, and I cannot tell you exactly today, we don't have enough time to tell you all that. Today, a good CBD plant will create about 20% CBD, roughly. But they have almost no marijuana because they don't need it, because the plant is putting all the energy on the babies. Now, when you put female together, there's sexual frustration. She produces very aggressive resin, and that resin is very rich in THC, marijuana, up to 40%, and almost no CBD. So that is the difference. Now you understand the difference between CBD and marijuana coming from both from the cannabis plant. Depending on how you grow them, you're going to get one or the other. And don't forget, there's some other cannabinoid substances in the plant. It's not just CBD and THC. So the next thing I want to teach you is, how does that work in your body? We have a system we call the endocannabinoid system. Endo means inside the body in this case. Endo, Old Greek, means inside. So we have a system in the body that works with these cannabinoid substances from the cannabis plant. Now, interestingly, other plants also have cannabinoids. And I'm going to mention one plant like Helichrysum from Croatia has also cannabinoids in the plant. And it's not called cannabis, but it has the same substances, or similar substances. So let's look. We have 4 pieces that work in our body. We have the keys, we have the keyholes. The keys we call ligands, the keyholes we call receptors. Then we have the cranes and the hammers. The cranes are enzymes that build up. The hammers are enzymes that break down, they metabolize. And then we have little boats that help with the transport. So right now, let's walk through these 4 different pieces. We have the cannabinoids. Those are the extracts that we get that are like CBD, THC, but some others. They can come from the plant. We call them phytocannabinoids because the plant means phyto in Old Greek. Then we have cannabinoids we call endocannabinoids because they are produced in your own body. Yes, every one of you listening today, you are producing cannabis-like substances in your body, as you also produce opioid substances in your body. And then you can create cannabinoids in the laboratory, synthetic cannabinoids. So let's walk through these 3 different cannabinoids types. These are the keys in our body. So on the plants, we have these different ones, CBD, THC, CBD, and marijuana. These are the 2 most famous ones. But we also all have some like THCA and CBDA. These are the precursors, and the A stands for acid. So it's an acidic precursor of the CBD and THC. Then we have others like CBG, cannabigerol. And cannabigerol is an important one because that's the mother cannabinoid. That's the first one that is generated in the plant. And that then turns into THCA and CBDA and other things. And depending on the enzymes that are being used, then you're going to get CBD and THC and CBN and CBC and many others. So these are the keys, the ligands. And we know that the plants has about 100 to 200 of these. And like when you put a key into a keyhole, you can either open a door or close the door with the key. The same thing happens with the receptors in the body. You can either start a reaction or you can block a reaction. And so this is what these things do. Now here, just to show you, this is CBG, cannabigerol. You haven't heard about it probably. I'm already doing some testing with it. It looks like a white powder, and it has some very interesting properties. And I can tell you those right now because Young Living is not selling them, and it's not really, we only have just a little bit research, but this has shown to be interesting for antibacterial, antiviral, and antifungal properties. And again, this is a compliant statement because we are not selling you any CBG, so I can tell you what the science shows. And I'm already found some ways on how to dilute that. It was a little different than CBD. And here's another one, CBN, cannabinol, which you see it looks like red rocks, and then you have to powderize it. It's very sticky. And I found also a way to put that into oil. And from the science, again, we don't sell that at Young Living, so I can mention that compliantly. In the science, it shows that it supports a healthy sleep. So I made quite some mixture with CBD, CBN, some lavender, some ylang ylang, some bergamot, and other things. Now, let's go to the next part. So we talked about those from the plants. Now let's talk about those that are produced in your body, the endocannabinoids. Well, you have about 6. We think we have about 8 now, but there might be many more. And so the best two known ones are anandamide and 2-AG. And 2-AG is just an abbreviation for a chemical long name. But anandamide is interesting because the name anandamide comes from the Indian old Sanskrit language. And anandamide means blissful, relaxing. And they call anandamide the bliss hormone, the relaxation hormone. And you have heard probably that CBD supports healthy relaxation, such as does lavender, for example. And so anandamide is quite important. And then the third part on how you can create CBD or get CBD is in the medical lab, is in the laboratory. And in fact, there's only a very few synthetic cannabinoids that are approved now by the government as medication, but the market is flooded with synthetic marijuana, for example, and it is very dangerous. So young people are vaping marijuana, they're doing e-cigarettes and all that, and they don't know that, especially from China, we got tons of synthetic marijuana that is sprayed on our products. So the products you are buying on the internet or in a store may be very, very dangerous. It can even lead to death. So don't use synthetic cannabinoids at this point because it's extremely dangerous. They be created very cheap and they being added to the products today to make the profits bigger. It's just very bad. So let's talk about the second part. We just talked about the keys, the first part of the system. The second part of the system are the keyholes or the receptors. And here I made you a little drawing. So if the mailman comes and he has a CBD letter, for example, and the CBD letter fits into the mailbox is the receptor, then the mailbox will be heavy and it will push down through the cell membrane. And by doing so, it will change something inside the cell, which will lead to a whole chain reaction in the cell. And we look, this is a CB1 and a CB2 receptor. CB means cannabinoid 1. Cannabinoid 2 receptor, and when CBD or THC or CBN, CBG attaches here, then something changes here, which leads to a whole reaction in the cell. And this is one of the ways that CBD can work in your body. Now, let's make a quick jump into the brain and into your nervous system. You will understand why I'm doing this right now. So here you see a picture of the brain and you see like all these nerves are connected to many other nerves. So let's look at one nerve in specifically here, right? So here you have a drawing of one nerve and you see the nerve has many little hands where it receives the signals. We call these dendrites. The signals will then go in the middle of the cell to this yellow nucleus, which is the computer. And then the processing will take part, and then the result comes out as a signal and will go down this long tail we call an axon. And at the end of the tail, you have, again, many, many different hands with little buttons. We call them terminal button because they're at the end. And they connect to many of these hands we call dendrites. And so this is how all these nerves connect in the brain and in the nervous system. So let's look on how you connect these two nerves. So if I put two nerves together, now you understand how this signal is processed and how it moves down here. But they don't really touch each other. They have something, and I get
I'm still stuck on that. I don't know.
Okay, it's maybe your computer. I don't.
Ask if the others see.
Yeah, I was told that the Zoom is stuck on my wife's thing, so I'm gonna real quick look at the chat.
But here, everything is okay here, Doc? All
Okay,
good?
perfect. Good. Okay, then we're good. Then it's just an internal problem here. All right. So when the two nerves are touching each other, they're not really touching. They have a gap in between. You see this when we look here very closely? And so when we make this gap bigger, you see this. So you have the incoming nerve, which is the terminal button, and you see there's a gap, and here we have the dendrite of the next nerve. And the signal, the electrical signal, cannot jump over this water that is in between. Here's like the Atlantic in between. But we have little bubbles, and these bubbles contain a substance we call neurotransmitters. Neuro has to do with the brain and the nerves transmitting a signal. These are chemicals that you produce in your body, and most of these chemicals, by the way, are produced in your gut. So when your gut is not healthy, remember, Ali, the 3 brains? This is what I told you there. When the gut is not healthy, you're not producing enough of these neurotransmitters that are extremely important in the signal transmission of the brain. And that's when your memory becomes bad, when your emotions become unstable, and honestly, your brain starts to shrink. So let's look again at these receptors. We have them here on the terminal buttons. We have these mailboxes. And then where do these, when you take CBD, this is where CBD or marijuana can go. But then we have these little bubbles. And when they activate it, they go over the water into the dendrite of the next nerve, and there are receptors again. So when the bubbles fit into the receptors, the signal is recreated and the signal can go into the next nerve. But when we look very, very closely, we see there's little manufacturing plants. And what do these manufacturing plants produce? Anandamide and 2-AG, those endocannabinoids I told you about. Now, that's interesting because that means that CBD has something to do with the production of anandamide and 2-AG. But how do they get back to have an effect here? Here we have the little boats that take these fat-soluble substances across the water back to the mailboxes, the receptors. And so we have a closed loop here where something can happen within seconds in any part of your body, in any organ, because we have nerves everywhere. Do you see the brilliant system that we have in our body? Our body can adjust to almost every condition that might be different in different organ system at any given time, and can adjust and rebalance that system by using substances like CBD and other plant materials, by influencing anandamide and 2-AG, and by influencing this whole transfer. And once you understand that, oh my God, now you start understanding what's going on. So let's look at these receptors. I told you we have CB1 and CB2. So just a few years ago, and still today, you see this on the internet, people think it's all about CB1 and CB2. CB1 receptors you find mostly in the brain and the spinal cord, but some on other places. And we know that THC, marijuana, attaches mostly to CB1. And because most CB1 receptors in the brain, this is why marijuana has an effect on the brain and makes you cuckoo. Now, there are very few CB1 receptors in the brainstem where you control breathing and heart rate and all the important function of life. Unfortunately, there's a lot of opium receptors in the brainstem. This is why people that take too much opiates can die when they are addicted to opiates. But when you're addicted to marijuana, which is not as addictive as opiates, you cannot die from that because there's no receptors in the brainstem. The only way that people with marijuana die is basically when they sit in a car and they drive like they drank, and then they die. Now, CB2 receptors, I told you there's a few in the brain. And in fact, those few in the brain do in fact counteract the craziness of marijuana. So if you want to smoke marijuana for medical purposes, but you don't want to get as cuckoo and paranoia as others, you should add a little bit more CBD to it, and it will decrease the craziness. But you see, most of the CBD is in the immune system, like here in the thymus and in the gut. 70% of your immune system is in the gut and on the skin and on every organ and in the bone, where you also have immune system. And so CBD is CB2 receptors everywhere. And this is where mainly CBD will go, okay? Now, when we look at the science, we see many different names like serotonin receptors, GABA receptors, temperature receptors, and we thought these are all different receptors, but we start to recognize that they all work together. And so your body has millions and billions of receptors. They can multiply or decrease in numbers within a second, and they can adjust according to your condition in any given place in your body. This is so absolutely fantastic. So now I talked about the keys and the keyholes, the ligands and the receptors. So the third part I told you, we have enzymes. We have construction cranes and hammers. So we have a whole construction crew and we have a whole demolition crew. So the construction crew will help to form, for example, anandamide and 2-AG, your own cannabinoids, and then the demolition crew will break down CBD, will break down anandamide and all that. And so everybody was thinking that CBD's effect is mostly by binding to CB2 receptors. But today we know that CBD is a very weak binder. It's a very weak key to put in the CBD receptor. But what it does, it inhibits the demolition crew. It sends it away. And that way, the anandamide concentration in your body goes up. And this is an indirect way on how CBD can work. And so you ask me why it's so complicated? Because they need to be able to regulate. They need to be able to work more or work less. And this is confusing to a lot of people. When you read research, some of the research will say CBD is making the immune system weaker. And some other research will say CBD makes the immune system much stronger. Well, in what situation will CBD make the immune system weaker? When you have a overdrive of the immune system, such as an autoimmune disease, then CBD will regulate that down. When does it make it stronger? When you have a weak immune system and you need a strong immune system. So you see, CBD working through anandamide and other things indirectly can balance the body, can balance an immune system, can balance a bone, and so on. The fourth part of the system are the transporter, the little boats. And so I just choose two little beautiful little boats here. So now you understand all four parts of the body. Why do we have this complicated system? It's the concept of homeostasis. We want to balance the body, and that's called homeostasis. Okay, so once you have homeostasis, you're in balance. Where can you get benefits from CBD? I just told you it works everywhere where you have nerves, because that's where you have the anandamide, and CBD works through anandamide and other things. And so therefore, you're going to see benefits from CBD to your wellness, to your beauty, to your fitness, everywhere in your body, in the brain, in the eyes, in the heart, in the gut, in the bones, in the immune system, in the liver, in the spleen, in the skin, wherever. You're going to see benefits because it's homeostasis, it's balancing. Is CBD dangerous? A lot of people that you're going to talk about CBD. CBD is a great way to build your business. I can just tell you, in Japan, for example, after Young Living launched CBD, a few months later, CBD sales make about 20% of Young Living products in Japan. So same trend we see in South Africa. So very, very big business, CBD. So a lot of people will say, well, it's dangerous. It has to do with marijuana. Now you have the answer and you can explain what's different between marijuana and CBD. I just told you all that. But is it dangerous? Well, there's a lot of studies have been done, and they have compared CBD to many medical drugs that we use. And they looked also at side effects of CBD. And as expected, the most common side effect of CBD is probably not even a side effect. It's a beneficial effect that we are trying to get. And it means tiredness, relaxation, removal of anxiety, because that's what anandamide does, the bliss hormone. In very few cases, we see an overstimulation of the gut, a little diarrhea that typically goes away pretty quickly. And then we also see sometimes a change in appetite, which in most cases will be to your benefit. And then it was compared with many medical drugs, and it was concluded CBD is much, much safer than all the medical drugs that are out there, even over-the-counter drugs. Now you have to be aware that there's going to be an interaction between about 80-90% of the drugs, the medical drugs that you get from the doctor, and CBD. And it's not that CBD interacts with the drug. I think it's more the drug interacting with CBD, because if you would be healthy, you would not need the drug in the first place, right? And CBD is a natural substance from a plant that God put out there to interact with our body. So you need to ask your physician. You don't need to text me, Facebook me, email me, call me. I will not answer, because everyone that has one or two medication will need to talk to the pharmacist and the doctor to see if CBD goes well with the drug, because both the drugs and CBD use the same enzymes, the hammers, in the liver to metabolize. And so it could be that the blood levels of the medication are too high or too low, and that could be dangerous. So you need to check with your healthcare provider when you use medical drugs. The problem we see in the market with CBD products that you buy online and you buy in stores and with other CBD network marketing companies is We know that 85%, and this is science, it's not just me giving you a number, there is a science, and the reference to the science you're going to find in my book. Over 85% of cannabis products, whether it's CBD or marijuana, contain pesticides, solvent, heavy metals, and other toxins. And 70% of the CBD products have wrong numbers on the label. They either underlabeled because the manufacturer is afraid that the government will come and say you have too much CBD in there, or they overlabeled because they want to make more money. So they say we have more in there than they really have. And some products are just hemp oil, which has zero CBD or marijuana in it, and you pay 100, 200 euros for nothing, just for healthy seeds, which you can buy for 5 euros. Seed to seal is extremely important with CBD, as it is extremely important for essential oils. Now, just remember, Young Living has the most expensive laboratory in the world to test plants. We have machines, equipment that nobody else has, costing dozens of millions of euros. All these machines we cannot use only to test essential oils. We can use the same machines to test CBD, and we do. So, of course, we can have the best quality CBD. Other companies don't have that. CBD companies don't have all this important equipment. They send it out to other companies to make another test, and these companies may not have this good equipment. So just be aware, when you look at these numbers, 85% are contaminated, 70% have wrong labels. You put this together, you can almost say that almost every product in the store, that when you go buy in a store or online on the internet, is not a good product. And this is where we need the governments of all the countries to step in and start making quality controls so you're not taking bad products. The nice thing is we are Young Living. This is a big difference. You have a seed to seal quality on our CBD. The last thing I'm going to tell you, which is going to lead to why Young Living CBD is so much better also, is to explain to you the entourage effect. What is an entourage? Let's say you want to carry a piano up to the first floor, and it's very heavy because you're alone. But then you call all your friends are the entourage. And with your friends, you carry up the piano. It's just very easy. You can even sit on the piano and make the victory sign, right? So the same thing with the plants. If you have the cannabis plants, you have the cannabinoids such as CBD and THC and CBG and all that. But you also have terpenes, like sesquiterpenes, monoterpenes, diterpenes. These are the ones that give it the aroma, the smell, the taste, and many others. So you have hundreds of things in there. But some of these things don't smell very good and all that. So most companies will remove some of that stuff. Let's say peppermint essential oil. We have the entourage in the peppermint essential oil because we don't take just menthol out of peppermint. We take everything that you find in the peppermint plant. So let's look at the products out there. So once you understand, entourage means all the components in the plant work much better together than one single compound. So the peppermint essential oil works much better than just a single menthol. Now let's have a look at. You can buy 3 different CBD products on the market. You can buy a full spectrum or a broad spectrum, or you can buy an isolate. So what is a full spectrum? You distill or you extract the cannabinoids out of the hemp plant, and you don't do anything much more. This is a full spectrum. Then you decide, okay, it's tasting not so good. It looks a little dirty. Let's remove the chlorophyll. Let's remove some of the terpenes. Maybe we're also going to remove the THC, the little bit that is in there. Then you have a broad spectrum. And then you can go all the way to the extreme where we say we remove everything. And the only thing left is CBD, a single substance, like menthol in peppermint. So people will ask you, what do you use in CBD at Young Living? And you're going to say, we're using isolate. And then people will say, oh, this is bad. You just lost the entourage effect. You lost all the effect of all the good terpenes and even the good effects of a little bit marijuana. You lost that. Why would you do that? Well, because we want to make sure that you're not testing positive for marijuana. If you're in the police, the military, in the healthcare, you're a pilot, you're a driver, you need to do drug testing regularly. And we cannot afford at Young Living that you test positive for marijuana. This is one of the reasons why we decided to get purified, no solvents, no pesticides, no heavy metals, pure isolate. But we lost the entourage effect. However, we have something that nobody else has. We have essential oils. The essential oils are pure, seed to seal, full of entourage, and even much better, we can now mix a targeted solution. Let's say you take lavender essential oil, and you know lavender has an entourage that makes you relax, that is really good for your skin, that is really, really nice and helps you with a good sleep. Well, CBD does similar things. So now if you mix the CBD isolate that is completely clean with lavender and essential oils, you get now a smart spectrum. So this is a new way of creating CBD solutions. And it's a smart way because I can use lavender for a relaxing CBD. I can use maybe a wintergreen essential oil, mix it with isolate to create something that is very good for your muscles and for your joints. Do you realize how smart that is? Nobody else in the world does that, and nobody else in the world right now has that capability. Now, I know there's a couple of companies that have added peppermint or lemon to their CBD, but that's synthetic and it's single substance. It's not the philosophy of Smart Spectrum. It's the philosophy is, oh, our CBD smells so bad, our CBD oils, we need to add a little peppermint and synthetic peppermint. So a completely different philosophy, not very healthy. For us, the good taste from peppermint or lemon or cinnamon or whatever we use is a benefit, is a beneficial side effect. So putting this all back together, the creation of humans and animals and plants are intended to work together. So plants are not just to look at because they look nice, the flowers in your front yard. Plants are not just here to be eaten as a healthy calorie source and energy source. No, plants have been created together with the human body and the animal body to interact through all these receptors that I just explained to you. So when you start recognizing that and you start connecting the plants, the extracts from the plants, such as essential oils, the extracts such as CBD, with the human body that is full of receptors, then you know the balancing effect it will have on your health. And this is the light bulb that needs to go on in your head. So coming back to what I said in the beginning, when Gary told me, you don't have to exactly understand how an essential oil works. Once you use it, your body knows what to do with it. Of course, he was right, because your body is full of receptors that are waiting for these plant extracts. And depending on how you do in this second or moment of your life, the body may need to balance your body in your bone or in your eye or in your heart. And it will create these receptors and it will help to balance with the plant material. The same thing is true for CBD, and the same thing is true for all the plant compounds. And so Gary was right all along. He was a genius. And that alone should give him the Nobel Prize. So what is CBD from Young Living and the essential oils? It's homeostasis, one drop at a time. So here's the book. We talked about it. If you want to learn more, it's all in this book. And now we have over 40,000 copies sold by now. 3 parts in the book. The first part is about history. I didn't tell you today. Is about some more background on the plants, about the legal situation. Part 2 is all about science, the endocannabinoid system more in detail, but also the medical science. Where has been CBD used to treat disease? And it's absolutely compliant because this book doesn't mention Young Living with a single word. So it's not intended to sell you Young Living oils in that sense. It's intended to educate you about CBD. And in the third part, I start combining CBD with essential oils. I mention different essential oils, not Young Living oils, just in general. And I tell you what these do, like lavender is really good for relaxation, but CBD too. So when you combine these two, it's a cool thing. And I can back that up with almost 900 references. So if you scientifically want to read those references, they're all in the book. Now, the other book that I wrote in English and in German is The Doctor's Guide to Essential Rewards. And it's a huge help if you're confused what products at Young Living you need to do. And this is an old slide. We already sold over 400,000. And it explains to you in the Essential Rewards program every month why you need to sign up for the Essential Rewards program and what and why you order in the Essential Reward program. And we, in English, we also created little mini booklets that we just give out to people that are interested. And then very often they're going to sign up and they already know about the Essential Rewards. And so this is what I just announced a little earlier. I'm going to come out with a CBD online training very, very soon, with about 12 to 14 documentaries, about 35 minutes each, about all these topics that you see here. So stay tuned. Sign up at drolly.com for the newsletter. Here you see drolly.com for the newsletter. We don't send out newsletter often, but we're going to announce when this is ready in about 1 or 2 months. We also do regularly essential oils symposium. Ali knows that. Every year we have about 50 or 60,000 people around the world that participate. And in each symposium, we have about 50 videos, 40 or 50 videos about essential oils, business building with Young Living, farms, personal development. And the speakers are all the famous people at Young Living, like all our Royal Crown Diamonds or book authors. And so you can get those at essentialoilsymposium.com if you want to. So this is how I want to stop. This is basically what we have for you at Young Living. You see every product is in here twice because every product has 2 different dosages. We have 600, 300 milligrams, 600, 300 here. Then we have 500 and 1,000 milligram on the bottles. So this is what I wanted to tell you today. And maybe Ali has done some questions about these different products, but now you understand how smart and genius these Young Living products are, how different, how much more quality. Young Living products, CBD products, are like the Rolls-Royce of the industry, better than anything else. And what you buy online is basically the trash of the industry in most cases. So if you want to know more, these are my websites, my Facebook sites, my Instagram. And, if you want to get help, don't email me to ask what medication you should not take. I'm not going to answer that. I'm getting 300 emails a day, so please don't email me too often. I have a team. I don't even look at the emails myself unless the team gives it to me. So with that, thank you so much. Let me stop sharing, and I give back to Ali and see what questions you might have.
Wow, Doc, what an amazing session with you. What an honor that you shared your knowledge with us, your science, your insight. And if you take a look in the chat now, because I think now you have a little bit time to check it, you will see that people are so grateful. I got also some private messages that people are really excited and are really grateful for learning so much tonight. I would say, because we are recording the session, I would like to finish now the recording for a second.
Let me just answer with the recording 2 questions I see right here.
Okay, yes, let's do it.
Yeah, the one question is, can a healthy pregnant woman take CBD? The answer is we do not know. Why don't we know? Because CBD was illegal until a few years ago. Science has not finished up the studies looking at pregnant women and also breastfeeding women. So until that is definitely answered by science and medicine, I would say if you're pregnant or if you're giving breast milk to the baby, I would not take CBD. Very likely it's going to be okay, but you need to wait until results are out. The next question I saw was, can you take CBD internally? That's a very good question. And in fact, when Young Living started selling CBD oil, when you open the oil bottle, you have a pipette, and you see on the pipette, there's the little oil. So a full pipette is 1 milliliter. A bottle is 30 milliliters. So you have 30 doses, 30 days, 1 dose per day. Now, when we put this out, when we came out with the CBD, the label said you can put it under the tongue. Why? Because the law in the United States at the time was unclear on whether it is classified as a cosmetic or as a supplement. And so many companies do sell CBD to take internally under the tongue or swallow. In the meantime, Europe and United States and Asia have defined that for the moment, it is not a nutritional supplement. Therefore, legally, you have to change the label. It is a cosmetic, and therefore it can only be smelled or applied to the skin. And this is what the label tells you. The exact same oil that a year ago we were able to put under the tongue legally has to go on your skin now, and the label will tell you put it on the skin. When and if, and there's a tendency for that to happen, the government will allow CBD to be a nutritional supplement. Then we will have probably a separate plus line of CBD like you have it with essential oils. You understand? Peppermint and peppermint plus, exactly the same oil, different classification, different label, one as a cosmetic to smell and put on the skin, and one the plus peppermint to put internally. We don't have that yet with CBD, so therefore you can officially not take it internally because that would be against the law. And so Young Living is always legal and compliant. This is the reason why the label says put it on your skin. I think that was a very important thing. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You're right. Thank you so much for answering these questions. So let's allow a last question, and then I would like to finish the call for tonight. And I will share the recording afterwards. So guys, you can watch it again and share it with others. The question is, can I use it for my pet?
Absolutely. And I say absolutely. What do we know from science? And again, you have to watch my documentaries. There's a 40-minute documentary about CBD and animals. We know enough to say that it's probably good, but we don't know enough for every animal. So when you look at studies, they're only made with dogs. And this is not the animal study the way you think animal studies are. These were sick dogs. They have tested dogs with joint problems and tested dogs with epilepsy. And they have made two groups. One group just got the normal medication. The other group got the medication plus CBD. And in both cases, multiple studies, all the studies show about the same, 80% roughly improvement when the dog had epilepsy and 80% roughly improvement when the dog had arthritis or joint pain. So we can conclude from these studies, we can also conclude roughly what dosage we need to take. And in fact, Young Living had a pet CBD until the moment the law said you cannot take it internally because it's all difficult to put CBD on the hair of a dog or a cat. We also know that the liver of a cat is different than a dog. We don't have study with horses. We don't have study with birds or snakes. So we just extrapolating from that little bit science that we have. And right now, veterinary medicine is very intensely researching that because we think, like with the human body, it will help a lot. The last thing I want to answer, a question that I don't even see, but I was asked many times in the last 2 weeks, is will I feel a difference when I take CBD? And my answer is, if you are healthy and you are somewhat balanced, you will take CBD and likely you will not feel a difference, even though the CBD is balancing and supporting your wellness, fitness, and beauty. If you are very sick and you take CBD because CBD helps you balance your body, you may feel a difference. But I'm asking you, how do you feel a difference in a more healthy immune system? You will feel it in a month that you're not getting sick like all your neighbors at school, for example. But the feeling of CBD is not like with marijuana, where you feel it after 2-3 minutes when you smoke marijuana, right? Because CBD is balancing your organ system. So should you take it? I'm so convinced that I'm taking it since over 10 years every day. So that's my answer to that question.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Doc. What an amazing evening. Really great that we could win you for that. A lot of people learned, and I'm quite sure a lot of people will still learn because you allow us to record this. Thank you so much.
Humanitarian organization.